Welcome to today's webinar presented by the Hiatt Career Center at Brandeis University, From College to Career, a webinar for parents and families of first-year students. We're so happy to have so many of you joining us today, and those of us watching the archived version later on when this is posted. My name is Alexandra Stevens, and I'm the Associate Director of Career Programs and Engagement here at Hiatt, and I'm thrilled that you can all join us for today's program. Please, if you have any questions throughout, submit them through the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll get to as many as we can in the Q&A session. There will also be a few interactive polls that will pop up on your screen, so if you could take a moment to respond to those multiple choice questions, we will make this as interactive as possible. So we have a lot to get to today, so I'm going to introduce today's presenter, who is Andrea Dine. She's sitting here in my office with me right now, Executive Director of the Hiatt Career Center. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Thank you for hosting in your office. So welcome everyone, both near and far, as families, as we know, live all over the world. So welcome to everyone, regardless of your time zone. My name is Andrea Dine. As Alexandra said, I'm the Executive Director of the Hiatt Career Center. I came into this role with diverse experience. I have about 25 years plus. I won't give away my complete age of experience in higher education and career centers specifically. I've worked at higher education institutions as diverse as Macalester College and the University of Minnesota and University of Connecticut and Wesleyan University. So that's just a small sampling. I really come to the role with a very sort of strategic focus. I'm also a very data analysis person as well. And so I bring those strengths to this office. I'm very fortunate to lead a team of talented professionals who are really dedicated to providing your student the education and support they need to be successful professionally. So many of the things we'll be talking about today are really focused on the ways in which we work with your student and ways in which you can support them as well. So that being said, our overall agenda for the day is to talk about the current job climate and value of liberal arts education. That actually has, the public perception of that is in the process of a significant shift currently, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Hiatt's approach and our philosophy as we work with students and alumni. Then we'll transition to what to expect in their first year, and so how you can be supportive of your students this very year. And then we will also look forward. I think it sometimes can be helpful to have a preview of the kinds of things we'll be doing and the kinds of things your student will be doing in the future. And so to that question, we have our first poll question for you.
Yes, so if you can take a moment, you'll see on your screen, if you attended college, how often did you visit your college career center as an undergraduate? Never, once, or more than once? I'd love to get full participation in this question, so just take a moment, a couple more seconds, and then we will share the results with you. This is one of 3 poll questions that we'll be doing today to make it a little more interactive. Give you 3 more seconds to weigh in. Quick yes or no. And we're going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So, Andrea, it looks like about half of our attendees never visited, 16% once, and about a third more than once.
Fair enough. Well, that's very helpful because that actually paints the very snapshot of what we can see or what our challenges are in higher education and career development specifically. Our office, as those of you that responded that you had never been to a career center like yours, is not a mandatory office. So one of the things we'll be talking about later, and I'll put some of the things that we do in context to start, just to give you a scope of what we do, have that very challenge about students having the choice or not to use our services. We are very fortunate in that we work with approximately half the first-year student class in their first year. So we're very focused as an office in working with students as early as possible because it takes time, as you know, to build any skill and any mindset. That those pieces take time. I'm going to take a moment to give you a snapshot for those of you that did use a career center or at least had the opportunity to, how things have changed for career centers and the work that we do, just to give you an idea of sort of the context that we're in today. So this is actually a real photo from 1993. That was actually a picture of our office in 1993. I'll point out, you can see in the background the job postings that are on the bulletin board. tacked up there with thumbtacks, and the binders as well. So there's binders of jobs and sometimes binders of alumni contacts. And you can see the student working diligently on his job search there, taking notes from the pieces of paper he took off the bulletin board. Also true during that time period, in addition to that, what we now see as a seismic technology shift, is that students often began thinking about careers senior years. Employers really had the expectation that they bring in a set of employees that are smart, talented people, and they will train them to do the work that they're going to do for them. And the recruiting that took place on campus were predominantly by large organizations. So a major retailer or manufacturer or service organization would come in, sweep up 20 to 30 plus, depending on the size of the school, graduating seniors, take them off, train them, and put them to work. Also true back earlier, and this is timelines getting shorter and shorter, people also stayed with an organization for a much longer period of time than they do now. So if you compare that today, so that may be reflective of when you were an undergraduate if you attended college. When we look at it now, college in some ways is a factor in the career decision process. So career is a factor now. So you may have thought about what your student is interested in doing after graduation before your student selected an undergraduate institution. Whereas before that was unheard of, now that's a common question. So our office and myself in particular participate a great deal in admissions events because so many people are asking career-related questions during that time period. Also, speaking to that, students may be thinking about career issues in their first year. They may be thinking about what major they want, even though they don't need to declare that until the end of their sophomore year. It still may be percolating, and what they may want to do is maybe percolating now. The other shift is that employers really have different expectations. They're expecting college graduates to have developed professional skills. And that can be something they develop in the classroom, like analytical skills, writing skills, or analysis skills. Or it could be professional skills in a particular field, whether that's a software platform or a particular knowledge base. The other piece, as we talked about the seismic shift in technology, students are now accessing opportunities through a myriad of mediums. So whether that's, it's not just a bulletin board or a website or a technology medium, it's incredibly diverse and they change every day. And for me, that's one of the exciting things to work in the field is to look at who are the game changers. So for example, I remember when LinkedIn started, which wasn't that many years ago, and now they're a true game changer on both the recruiting side and the hiring. And again, those things change almost on a daily basis now. The other seismic shift is where are job opportunities. Now, a majority of students are at small to medium organizations, not those large organizations that used to sweep in and hire a group of graduates at a time. And that changes the approach and strategy a student would take as they look at organizations and as they pursue opportunities. Small and medium organizations are less likely to have a sizable HR staff to be able to send to an event or a career fair because they don't have that kind of opportunity of scale a large organization has. And so that shifts the way in which we talk about pursuing opportunities with students. As we look at what the public perception is in public media, this slide was actually extraordinarily different 2 years ago. We are in a turn currently. If we looked at this very slide from a few years ago, and you still could Google and find those older articles, you would see that the decrying of a liberal arts degree. Oh no, we can't have folks go into liberal arts because there are no job opportunities, they're not successful, their salaries are lower, etc., etc. And so you'll see that a swath of those articles. But the tide has turned on that very conversation. And now organizations are looking at the strengths in liberal arts. A recent piece in this September in the Wall Street Journal talked about or conducted a much larger analysis of salaries related to majors. A great deal of the data that are out there are looking at first salaries immediately after graduation. And for liberal arts majors in general, this is not true in specific majors, but in general, the initial salaries of liberal arts majors are lower than their technically trained peers if they were trained to a particular profession. But what the Wall Street Journal's analysis, which looked at salaries and compensation over a much longer period of time, really showed that not only did liberal arts majors, quote unquote, catch up with their technical peers, they actually surpassed them in their career trajectory and for salary and income. So this kind of conversation has really turned the corner about how organizations, including Wall Street Journal, Fortune, and U.S. News here, as well as others, are talking about liberal arts. They're really talking about the strengths of the, individuals who graduate from programs who have a love of learning, who enjoy learning about diverse topics and issues, and really dive deep for analysis, problem solving, deep thinking, that kind of thing. And so now, again, we've turned that corner from the decriers now to actually organizations really recognizing the strengths of the liberal arts degrees, which of course here at Brandeis we've touted all the time. But not to leave outcomes in the ether there, so you have a concrete perspective. In general, approximately, and this is class of 2015, but this is very normative to data. If we looked at multiple class years, you'd see pie charts that look almost exactly the same. Even in the, I guess you call it the depth of the recession, our students placed extremely well, and they were set up for themselves very well after graduation. As you can see, just shy of a third of students go directly to grad school. That's very common. That's a mix of medical school, professional degrees, academic degrees like PhDs, as well as some specialty study as well. A majority of our students do work immediately after college, so you'll see that in this case in the 64% piece. Other is a diverse group. Fellowships, which I'll talk a little about later, travel, volunteerism is also very popular among students. And generally within 6 months of graduation, we have as many as 3% of the student graduating class looking. The other part of the slide on the right-hand side, I'll refer you actually to that web link to actually use the interactive data set. But you can actually see what majors have gone on to what careers and vice versa. So if you go to blogs.brandeis.edu/Hiatt Reports, this is a snapshot for this PowerPoint, but you can actually interact with our multiple year data set and see. You could click, for example, on the right-hand side on education and look at all the different areas of study that went into education, or vice versa. You could look at a particular major like politics and then see all the career fields politics majors have entered. So it's a nice way of playing with the information. I know that sometimes a student declaring a particular major may cause anxiety for a parent, and the parent or family member may say, well, what are you actually going to do with that major? Our students are very successful, so they will do something, I'm sure, exciting and interesting with whatever that major may be. And students, you'll see in the data set, for example, for students that go into business or a particular area of business, they really are doing so directly from a diversified group of majors, not just business majors. And so I do encourage you to take a deeper dive if data interests you. We really work on being as transparent as possible with our data. And where over time, this data set, as well as data about graduate schools and other things, is already live on this blog. And we are going to be, throughout the year, adding more data as it becomes available into these interactive data sets. So we're very excited about that. So please do take a look when you have a chance. It is, I find it, as a data geek, tons of fun to play with. Our philosophy and approach. We really see ourselves as conductors of a larger orchestra. We are focused on helping Brandeisians, and we are full service to undergraduate alumni for life, so it's students and alumni, identify who they are, what they want, and how to get there. And so that piece of putting together all the things that make your student a unique person, that includes their background, the courses that they take, the activities and jobs they have while they're here, and translating that and mapping that successfully into a professional track that makes sense for them. Of course, we could never do that work alone, so we really partner extensively with diverse constituencies. Employers may come first to mind, but we also work with other groups and offices on campus, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the presentation, and the greater Brandeis community, really to achieve this mission. We highly encourage students to speak to professionals and engage with professionals in their potential fields of choice, because then that will give them the greatest idea or snapshot about what it is they're potentially entering, even perhaps before they ever do an internship or a job. And to that end, we'll move to our next poll question.
Great. So this was kind of a fun one. We always like asking this question of parents and family members. When did you know what career you wanted to have for the rest of your life? Were you but a wee child under 18? Were you in your college years 18 to 21, post-college 22 to 39, 40 to 60, or are you still working on it? And we appreciate honesty here. No one's getting singled out for their response. So I'll give you just a few more seconds to respond to this poll, and then we'll share the results with you. And they may surprise you. They're always kind of different when we ask this question, so that's why it's fun. Okay, for time's sake, we're going to close the poll and share the results with you. So it looks like there's quite a mix. 15% under 18, good for you guys. 18 to 21, again, 15%. The majority found out 22 to 39. 40 to 60 at 15%, and 18% are still working on it. And one of our listeners just asked, is that still a thing, having a career for the rest of your life? So
I love that question.
Yeah, awesome question. So back to you, Andrea.
Thank you, and that's a particularly poignant question to what we'll be talking about. I think people really have careers that are evolutionary now, and it is very common. The numbers keep changing, so I won't quote a particular study because I feel like it's in flux. Very commonly, historically, I would say 1950s, for example, someone would go to work for an employer and they'd do that, work for that employer, potentially their entire career, and retire from that employer. Then we started shifting into a time period where people had multiple jobs. They might be in one career field, but they had multiple jobs within that. And people started throwing out, 7 to 8 employers in your lifetime in your field. And now we've moved beyond that. It really is people are having multiple jobs, multiple career paths, multiple roles within a particular employer or multiple employers. And so it really is a constantly shifting landscape. The future, which is both can be daunting and exciting. And that changing landscape actually really drives the work that we do and the way in which we work with your student, because we want them to have skills that will last a lifetime. So if you can speak about yourself, for example, persuasively to a potential employer, it won't matter necessarily if you have that skill, what job you're applying for or what career path you're choosing if you can do that well. And so we really take a strategic approach that we're working with folks to build lifetime skills. So here's some ideas of things that you can encourage your first-year student to do and start trying and thinking about. One is to get out of their comfort zone. And that's not necessarily skydiving, though that will be true for some of your students, but really just trying things they've never been exposed to. In the same way that academically, they're now able to take diversified types of courses and subject matters they've never been exposed to before. It's true for them whether that's in student activities or trying an event or getting involved with an organization or taking a job on campus, any of those things that will allow them to try something they've never tried before. Because as you know, some things can sound fantastic until you try it and then you're like, wow, that was not what I expected. The more a student can kind of push themselves to try things they've never tried before, the better they will know themselves. And for a lifetime, the foundation of values, skills, interests, and strengths helps steer them as they look at roles, employers, employer fit, and those pieces. It really is the foundational knowledge base that they will carry on for the rest of their lives. So as we know, college is a great time to try new things. They have new opportunities, both in the classroom and outside, and they should really take advantage of that. And so not necessarily staying in the safe comfort zone of a class they've always taken before or a type of activity they've always done. The other piece is to learn about the world of work. It always surprises me, for example, that a student may have a parent in a particular career field, but if you or they have not discussed that at home, they only have a kind of disjointed snapshot of what that work actually is and what the day-to-day role is. So the more students early on can start researching what is X job. So I'll have a student that will come in, for example, that's very quantitative. And I'll say, they're like, oh, I'm thinking of accounting. And they say that really only because they've heard of accounting and they haven't heard of other things. And I might suggest, oh, so have you also looked into being an actuarian? And their answer is, what? And so that piece of like researching, meeting, give examples of events later on where they can do this en masse, but really meeting different employers, learning about different career fields is very important in talking about that. Because again, that will help map who they are to what might work in the world of work. So my own major background, it was English, so that was my undergraduate degree was in English at UMass Amherst. And for me, I loved the writing, the research, the kind of relational components of that work, which carries into my professional work today. And so when you're talking about drawing connection and making career decisions, that research piece becomes important to know what you're potentially mapping to. The other piece is building professional skills. And so, for example, your student may be a fantastic writer because they've written all kinds of research papers as a high school student. However, now we're asking them at a university to do university level writing, and as they get ready to write professional documents, whether that's a resume, cover letter, or essay of some sort, we're asking them not to write a research paper, we're asking them to write about themselves. And that is something in general they have not had a lot of practice with. And like learning to ride a bike or anything else, they will probably fall off several times and fall short several times as they develop that skill. So the earlier they can start practicing that, the more successful they will be long term. Employer Ready is a designation we have that indicates that a student has begun to educate themselves about employer expectations and the proper etiquette and ethics in conducting a job or internship search, as well as having a reviewed resume. So they work with our team to put together their initial document for employment. And again, we work with a lot of first years on on-campus employment as well, so they're welcome to use that right away, or they may be developing that skill for later on and learning how to talk about themselves. That will translate then to cover letters and potentially graduate school essays in the future. The other piece that I can't emphasize enough is to encourage your students to use their resources. When we asked that question before, how many folks that attended college used a college career center, and almost half said they didn't. Now is not the time to not use your resources. The structures of academic services, of the Hiatt Career Center, and the plethora of other support networks on campus are really here to serve your student, and they're very thrilled and excited to do so. So encouraging, rather than have your student kind of sit in silence or saying, I'm wondering about that, please do encourage them to take advantage of these resources directly because we work in partnership with each other in a whole sort of network of ways. And so anytime they connect with a service or resource on campus, it actually helps them connect with others as well. So that can be very helpful for you to provide support for them to do that. All right, we're going to take a quick. So I know you're just adjusting to your student, probably being a first-year student. We're going to take a quick leap in time ahead, looking to sophomore and junior years. There are things that take planning that students should think about in that mid-time period in their college career. One is to identify potentially if they want to do study abroad. I can't say enough positive, encouraging things about if your student has the opportunity to engage in study abroad, though you can direct more specific questions to the study abroad office should you have them. I certainly can share the way study abroad is structured at Brandeis is that they can, for the vast majority of students, they can take their financial aid with them. So if they have financial aid here at Brandeis, they can translate that to an international program. So please do not let economics preclude a conversation about whether a student might study abroad. The growth components, both academically, professionally, and personally are quite strong. There's a lot of parallels in self-actualization data, career readiness, and professional skill development for study abroad. So I do encourage it. The other piece is there are some fellowship programs that ask students to apply or start their application sophomore and particularly junior year. Fellowship programs are an interesting mix. What makes something a fellowship is essentially it's an organization providing funding to do X. Now, X could vary. There are fellowships for particular work. And so, for example, some fellowships will provide income and support to teach English in another country, for example. Some will support travel and or research. Sometimes they're in tandem with each other. And other fellowships will pay for graduate study. And so again, fellowships may vary in purpose. Their unifying factor is that they have a sponsoring organization providing funding. And again, many of those things start early, so it's worth thinking about, certainly by junior year, if not sophomore year. The other opportunity students have is to step into upper-level student leadership roles. Again, this is directly correlates to professional development for skills for jobs. So if there are, for example, roles within Waltham Group, which is a student volunteerism group on campus, that they're actually managing about 400 student volunteers throughout Waltham. And so they really, the leadership roles in organizations can really enhance their preparation for any kind of supervision or management role they may have in the future, because they are quite pithy. The work that they're doing is very engaging, and it's something that directly translates then to their resume and to their cover letter and interviewing. So taking advantage of those opportunities, of which there are many, is very helpful. The other piece is that students are now, I'll back up to first years in a second. As you think about entry-level and increasingly advanced internships, in the same way that there are tiers of professional roles and you kind of work your way up the ladder, that is true for internships as well. It can be difficult for first-year students, not impossible, but can be very difficult for a first-year student essentially to compete with their future selves as sophomores and juniors. So what I often recommend, I certainly encourage students to look at internship opportunities their first year, but we know, depending on how competitive the opportunities are, it is not unlikely that they may not be chosen for a position because they are competing with sophomores and juniors. So I would recommend they look at what I would describe as entry-level internships, and some are labeled as that, initial or entry-level internships, first year. Or if they have an employer they've worked with before and they have a strong relationship, I also encourage first-year students to negotiate a shift in their role to take on new or different responsibilities so that becomes more advanced for them. Sophomores and juniors certainly then are looking to either do an entry-level internship if they've not done so yet, and then do a more advanced internship. And again, the more advanced internships are more competitive. They're expecting students to have more advanced coursework under their belt before selection. And again, as I said, having a student activity role or leadership role will enhance their opportunity and make them more competitive in that particular pool. And I know you can't believe it, you just had a senior, but we're going to jump forward to having a senior again. Some of the things for seniors to consider doing that can enhance their professional development and career later on is to consider pursuing a senior thesis or original research. Those opportunities exist throughout the curriculum, no matter what academic area of study they have chosen. We also have, if they have not yet taken advantage of a lot of our professional skills built-in, whether that's networking, professional writing, etc., it really is the transition time from backpack to briefcase. And they should allow time to make that shift. So they will need time to write applications to graduate school, to write job applications and cover letters, etc. We often tell seniors it's like taking an additional class, is equivalent to the time they will be spending their senior year in their job search. The other thing to know is, depending on what career field your student is pursuing, their recruiting schedules may be very different. So, for example, this time of year is very heavy on recruiting for particular fields, including banking, finance, and consulting. And so those students are a flurry of applications and interviewing right now, whereas a more normative time frame is true for fields like nonprofit administration, marketing, human resources, etc. Those same seniors really will be in the flurry of applications closer to January, February, March is when those posts will come open for May. So again, depending on the field, which hopefully they've learned about prior, we'll have them know sort of when that time period is going to be heavier work, but that piece takes planning and should be accounted for. I've mentioned fellowships before. Some do open senior years, so they may be working on those applications, as they will potentially for full-time job search and graduate school as well. As you saw, it was about 30% go straight into graduate school. Graduate school timeline is also early. Most students will get their applications in this semester for graduate school that starts next fall, though there are some schools with open timelines that go later. But it is a very time-intensive process to really put together coordinating your references, writing your personal statements, and really selecting what graduate schools are a match for your career goals is far more complex than it was even to compare undergraduate institutions. Because graduate institutions, you're predominantly looking at the scope or reputation or umbrella of what an undergraduate institution offers. For graduate school, you're looking for a very specific quality of a particular program within a university, which takes far more time and can be more complex to identify because you can't rely on the school's general name and reputation. From that, to give you an idea of what Hiatt does to support your student, and this is really a tip of the iceberg, take a look of what folks do. For employers, on the employer side, I talked about earlier that we connect with diverse audiences to support your student. Some of the things that are ongoing that we've actually had a few already take place this year is industry nights. They're not your parents' career fair. So an industry night has a range of structures. One of the more common ones is the industry night might start with a case competition. So we have real organizations bring real world issues or problems to the table. We have students, we put in teams, and they actually look to answer that question or problem. We've actually had some lovely cases brought to the case competitions by parents. We had a really nice one last year at the biotech industry night where a parent's firm was in the biotech area, and they were looking to better message the scientific work they do to a non-science audience. And so they had teams, they gave them a set of data about the technology and where their struggles were, and actually teams then pitched proposals of how that company could better approach outside audiences, including potentially investors. Just this past few weeks, we had the consulting, business, finance, and marketing and consulting case set. What was very interesting is the marketing group, and students, this is a flash case competition. They maybe have, 10, 20 minutes to discuss the case and make their recommendations. One of the teams actually made almost an exact recommendation for a marketing pitch for a new product as the professional firm the organization hired to promote their new product. So it's amazing what Brandeisians in general can get accomplished in a short period of time. So it's a lovely way to get a real-world taste of the kinds of challenges organizations face. So I highly encourage it. We also then have open networking. And we organize it by specialty or area, and then students can speak one-on-one or in small groups with professionals with diverse backgrounds, employers, specialties within their own work. And that's a lovely way. I talked earlier about the scope of the world of work and understanding what jobs are out there. It's not uncommon someone will say, oh, I'm interested in doing marketing, or I want to go into publishing, and I start kind of drilling down of, okay, what kind of role are you interested in? And you kind of get a blank response back. Industry Night is a great way to meet with many kinds of folks in many kinds of roles within a single field. It's really fantastic. We also have employers on campus all the time, both in spotlights, which is open discussion tabling, and information sessions, which are more formal, generally presentation workshops. We also have career fairs, both on campus and off. So we will bring employers to campus, but of course our students aren't geographically limited to campus, and so we do hold them in other cities as well. And in the larger career fairs we hold in other cities are called CIC, Career and Internship Connection. The other piece, so there's many skills to develop. One we emphasize in the most strong way possible is networking. And we've created, since students get nervous about networking and are hesitant to do networking, we've created sort of a tier of opportunities for them that are lower risk or might feel lower risk to them so that they ease into networking. The first of which is Wisdom Wanted, which is Alexandra actually leads that program. It's a fantastic program that bridges students to alumni, and the students essentially will write an ad of what it is that they would like to learn, so what wisdom they hope to achieve, and then those ads essentially get sent out to alumni and parents and families, and that then respond directly to the student. So it's a lovely way for a student to start networking if they are anxious or nervous or an introvert and it's harder for them. It's a way of putting what they hope to learn in writing and then have people contact them directly, which helps build their confidence in networking. We also host alumni employer office hours within the Career Center and elsewhere, so students can schedule time to meet one-on-one with a professional. I mentioned we have networking events and career fairs in other cities as well, and we sometimes take that on the road. And host, I didn't want to make the font tiny, we host a tremendous variety of skill-based workshops throughout the year that really run the gamut, everything from presenting yourself professionally to negotiating compensation. It really runs the gamut so that students have the skills that they need as they look at the world of work. And then I'm going to turn this over to Alexandra, who is our champion for ways in which you can get involved with Brandeis.
Yeah, so couple of things, and then we're going to get to your questions because you're sending in some really great ones and I'm typing feverishly back to you folks, but I want everyone to benefit from the answers. But we do offer many ways for parents to get involved to help current students with their careers. Essentially anything we offer up to alumni, it's open to parents and families as well. So there are opportunities to share career advice, post jobs and internships, network in person and online. For example, we host networking events in DC and New York every January, and so if you're in those areas, we'd love to have you attend as well. And there are also university-wide opportunities. Additionally, there are campus-wide events that all parents are invited to as well. So we have a lot of questions coming in, so I don't want to take up too much of your time describing these. We will have links to more information in a follow-up email that we'll be sending to all attendees. So I think we
are so we're going to dive into questions.
Good to jump into questions. And the first is actually just a general question, but we should probably answer this for folks. What do kids do at the Hiatt Career Center? So we talked about workshops, certainly, and career fairs and networking nights. But could you talk a little bit about the appointments students can make and our Hiatt advisors and the career counselors? I think that would be great.
So there are a variety, as Alexandra was describing, a variety of tiers in which students can become involved with our office. Oftentimes the front door for students, or the first time they may come in their office, if they have a quick question or more extensive question, so time is the mediator, we have an extraordinary team of student paraprofessionals that have been trained by our professional counselors to work one-on-one. So if you're familiar with the Roosevelt Fellows in Academic Advising, Hiatt advisors, who are our student paraprofessionals, provide a similar role here in Hiatt. So they're often very front-facing. They will do workshops. Actually, just last week there were several workshops at night in the residence halls, letting students know about opportunities to engage with our office. A student may come in for a drop-in and meet with a Hiatt advisor or a professional staff member, and those are approximately 15 minutes, usually quick questions. Where do I find a resource? Could someone look at a document for me? The most extensive way, or intense way in some ways, or time-intense way that we work with students is in direct career counseling and advising appointments. And this is where, in many ways, the heart and soul of our work lies, is really helping students to figure out who they are professionally, or who they are and where that might map professionally. So a career counseling appointment, though it ranges, is generally an hour, and it's an hour-long appointment with a professional career counselor on staff, assistant director. And those, the backgrounds of our professional staff dramatically vary. We have folks that have particular industries or specialty knowledge that all of our staff can work with a student on really any career path around who am I, how does that map to career, what I might do. A counselor may speak with a student about what major they may choose as it relates to career, or what careers a particular major leads to. They may have a conversation. Our favorite, if I surveyed the counseling staff, I have no doubt, if I were to ask them, what is your favorite kind of appointment? By far, the #1 response on the whole would be, I love talking to a student who has no idea what they want to do. And that, for us, I mean, that is the beauty of working at a liberal arts institution. A student could come into Hiatt and really have no idea whatsoever. They might have 12 million interests and no idea what direction to go on. A career counselor, of course, would never make a decision for a student, but it is their role in some ways to provide guidance about what kinds of questions to ask, what fields might be a good match, and really work one-on-one with the student as they go through that professional decision-making process. So in some ways, that's the very heart and exciting way in which we work with students. The other side from counseling is the professional skill development and building. And we do that both in a workshop at an industry night and one-on-one as well. To help students really become more advanced in their professional skills. So to that point, Alexandra, for example, runs a program with volunteers that students can do practice interviews in the field of their interest, or practice medical school interviews, for example, with professionals and get feedback on their professional skill building. That would fall under the professional skill building, and on the event side, a student can schedule one of those on a Tuesday night and do a practice interview, or they could do that with staff as well. But those are some of the examples of the ways in which we work with students. Our team also has an employer relations branch that works directly with employers. Now, more and more, we're getting back. I said before, employers originally planned to do all the skill building. Now they plan, we're in the time period where they plan on doing little skill building. They want the students to have it already. We're really working in a model with employers that we partner with employers to help students develop more extensive skills. So far, we've been most successful on that, on the computer science. If I had to identify a department, it's been very successful in those employers, including really extraordinary employers who are willing to come to the table and do a practice interview or talk through a career trajectory with a student who has very little courses yet, even in computer science, never mind is an advanced coder. So that partnership we found is very fruitful, but it's another way in which we work with students. Did I miss anything else that you wanted me to catch on?
Yeah, I think that covers it.
Great.
While you're on jobs and internships, we've gotten a couple questions on that. How do students find internships? Is information on internships available through your office?
Yeah.
And so the quick answer is yes and yes. We have a job and internship database called Be Hired, which has thousands of job and internship opportunities. Students can log in with their unit IDs and passwords to access these jobs, and then talk with a counselor or one of our peer career advisors, as Andrea mentioned, to talk through that strategy. So internship search strategy, but also preparing their applications, getting a resume reviewed, getting a cover letter reviewed. I do also want to make the distinction, because this was a question as well, where to find work study positions. And so those specifically on-campus jobs that are categorized as work study are managed through the Office of Student Financial Services. So our counselors can certainly help students who are applying to those jobs prepare their resumes, talk about ways to follow up with an office if they haven't heard back yet about their candidacy, but those specific postings are listed on the Student Financial Services website. We have a kind of a fun question here. I'd be interested in hearing your opinion, because I think we all have a little different opinions on this. Should students make up business cards when they're attending some of our networking nights and career fairs?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. Our networking nights in particular are, I don't want to say informal is too strong, but they're not as formal as a career fair. Really, the joint goal of an industry night is both the career education component, as well as many of those employers, of course, then post and recruit for jobs and internships and take into account the conversations they had at the industry night. But they're not instructed that that's their primary purpose at the industry night. So in that case, a student certainly could create a business card. There's certainly several makers, including Avery, that a student can actually print out their own business cards. I've found there are places certainly for seniors that I think a business card can be helpful, particularly if you're networking at a conference. You can provide your information and what information you're asking of others on the flip side of the business card, and I think that can be a very successful strategy. In general, I would say on campus, a student probably does not need a business card if they're doing that kind of networking off campus. I think off campus, it doesn't hurt. but it's not an expectation most employers have of undergraduates. So I'm Machiavellian and like by any means necessary, so it certainly doesn't hurt, but I also wouldn't put it in the category of a requirement.
Yeah, I think another thing that we also coach students on is how to follow up appropriately after these events. So getting on LinkedIn, connecting with the folks you met, sending a thank you note after an informational interview. These are the types of strategies that we cover in our workshops that are preparatory workshops before attending these events, but also in follow-up strategy sessions for how to make the most of it, because it's one thing to just meet someone and then never talk again. So we really stress the importance of maintaining professional relationships as well.
Right, and to that, Alexandra touched on a little bit the communications piece that I don't know if it's been directly asked, but I do want to address. We communicate regularly with your students. We have, at very minimum, which is usually not where we're usually 5 times the minimum, we have a weekly newsletter that targets students to update them about upcoming programs and events. So we have a program event newsletter. We also, as opportunities arise, whether that's by class year or interest area or major, all of which students can identify in our platform, which is called Be Hired, we will send them direct messaging that's relevant to them. We're very fortunate in that our platform allows students to identify all those things, what they're interested in, what their background is, etc. So then we can provide very specific targeted messaging to them. For something that might be open to all students, as first-year students, we might message by class year. But as opportunities come in that are focused or more specialized, we would share those with students who have self-identified that they're either self-identified that they're interested in that area, or their behavior by attending an event has indicated they have an interest in that particular area. So on one hand, we don't want to over-message your student. On the other hand, we want them to receive the helpful information that is relevant to them.
Great, thank you. So I just want to let everyone know, time check, we have about 13 minutes left. So if you have any additional burning questions, please submit them now and we'll try to answer as many as we can. So question for you to address, Andrea. Our office is open 9 to 5 for in-person appointments and things like that. Many Brandeis students study abroad, and parents, you'll hear more about that. That's a sophomore year thing, sophomore, junior. But we do offer some outside of typical office hours opportunities for students to connect with us. So if you want to tell them a little bit about evening drop-ins and Hiatt Chat, and also the interview coaching remotely.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you, Alexandra. The Hiatt is open later in general on Tuesday nights, so we have extended hours Tuesday nights. We also do early hour appointments as well. So for some folks, including athletes, they have very regimented schedules for both practices or games and their academic schedule. So for many of those students, 8 a.m. is a great time to come in for an appointment because it's prior to all those things starting. And so we do early morning appointments. We also do evening hours as well. Generally, we're open till 7 o'clock on Tuesdays in general. And though we may have other things that go much later than that. We also have an online version of drop-ins called Hiatt Chat. And that is from 8 to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday. So for if your student is a night owl, that's a great way to get in touch with our office. We also will have events. Actually, we have a big event for homecoming this weekend that take place on weekends as well. And so dates and times and hours vary. We also use a lot of adaptive technology to engage people at a distance, whether that's study abroad or they're contacting us from home. And so we'll use conference platforms like Skype or Blue Jeans. We have a few to choose from. Sometimes they vary in quality by country, so we decide accordingly, and do appointments, whether they be by phone or Skype or some other technology, so that we can adapt to people's different locales, time frames, time zones, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just to remind folks, we are full service to undergraduate alumni for life.
Yes.
So we meet with alumni who are all over the country, all different ages. So once your student graduates, they still have full free access to career services from our office. So we have another question coming in here about where would you advise a freshman pre-dental or pre-med student to start? And actually, whereas our counselors can help with career decision making and graduate school decision making, out of academic services, there is an office specifically for students interested in pre-health careers and going to medical, dental, and veterinary school. So the first step would be to meet with the staff in that office.
Yes, and they do a series of get to know you and orientation essentially to pre-health at Brandeis, where they outline all of the resources and services they have. They're really quite specialized. The course requirements specifically for the pre-health fields, including dental school, are quite explicit. And so their specialty within academic advising and academic services is also helping the student confirm it and make sure that the student takes the prerequisite courses they will need to be able to apply. And there are tiers of both required courses and preferred courses. And so they work extensively with the student as a direct academic advisor to make sure that they have those requirements. Some of the other pieces, whether the student's conducting scientific research or they're looking at clinical opportunities within hospitals, they may actually use both offices to take advantage of those resources. There is a listserv. So the number one thing a first-year student could do, specifically if they're interested in pre-dental and those families of work, is to sign up for the pre-health listserv. So there is a very strong, active email distribution group from pre-health. And if your student is a member, even if they're not ready to take advantage of some of the things that are available on that listserv, for them to learn freshman year, kind of what comes out when and when the opportunities are, will help them think forward and start thinking about the questions they will need to answer about themselves and about their interest, in this case, for example, in dental, later on. So I think it's helpful for them to join in their first year, even if they're not terribly active with the information being sent out, because it'll familiarize them with the field.
And just to confirm, this was a follow-up question. The office is called Health Professions Advising, and it is through the Academic Services Department. Another question, quick answer. Can parents access Be Hired? Yes and no. So students can access Be Hired with their unit ID and password, which they access most of the things at Brandeis with, including their email. That will allow them to search jobs and internships, access some of our password-protected career development resources, as well as RSVP for events and view our full career events calendar. Parents cannot access Be Hired on the student side of things, but if you are an employer and would like to hire Brandeis students and post jobs and internships for our students, parents are able to create an employer account. We also have a really easy job and internship posting Google form so that you can share postings with us that way. But short answer, no. To see what the student sees, the student needs to log in him or herself.
Right, and to add to that, here are ways in which you can see what the Career Center is doing, which maybe, I don't know if that's behind your question. Our office submits all of our events to the Brandeis calendar, and you can actually drop down for career events and see career events for our Career Center and the other career centers on that calendar. And the other option you have where we promote events and provide information is on the Hiatt Career Center Facebook page as well. So those are two easy ways, whether it's the university calendar or Hiatt Career Center's Facebook page, that you can get regular information and kind of get the pulse of what goes on in the office.
Great, thank you. So we have about 7 minutes left. So I'd say we should start wrapping up. If there's any last minute Spitfire questions, please type them in. But final thoughts for parents of first-year students. You know, this is only October. I know some of you were surprised that we are offering this so early in the first semester. But of course, as Andrea mentioned, this really is an opportunity for your students to just explore what they like, what they don't like, get accustomed to college life, but keep in the back of their minds that the Career Center is here for them and it's never too early to come in. But yeah, any final thoughts, Andrea?
Yeah, I would say own the comfort or discomfort with change. Your student, we used to talk about how often a student would change their major. That will happen for their career decision making as well. It's it happens that a student may, from a very early age, even before they got to Brandeis, know what they, quote unquote, know what they want to do. But that changes, can change dramatically, sometimes from moment to moment, and roll with that. Just know, we talked about very early on, we talked about how often people change not only jobs, but careers. And their students' thought process will evolve over time as they learn more. And so I really would encourage you to think about this process that your student will be experiencing as a process. It's very unusual that something will get chiseled in stone forever in their first year, or sometimes even in their senior year. Their evolution of knowing who they are and what the world of work is like will change, and therefore their decision making will change with it. So I encourage you to continue to draw upon your well of patience with your student as they navigate the world of work and what their place might be in it.
Great, thank you so much, Andrea. So that is it for us today. You've been a wonderful interactive audience, so we do appreciate it. Please take a moment at the close of this webinar to fill out our satisfaction survey and let us know how we did. We want to hear from you, and we certainly tweak these programs based on your feedback. We also want to let you know that I actually host a monthly webinar program for alumni about career topics that vary from salary negotiation to complete career overhauls and change. And those are open to the full Brandeis community, including you. So feel free to take a look at our events calendar and join us online for another webinar later on this month. Here's our contact information. You will all be getting the slides from today's presentation, so you'll be able to have this and hopefully pass it along to your student. And I also want to remind you, if you haven't already, and if you are on Facebook and using social media, to join the Brandeis Parents and Families Facebook group, especially as a parent of a first year. It's a wonderful outlet to ask questions of parents that have been in the Brandeis family for a couple more years, and get advice and share information about your student and the goings-on on campus. So please join us there if you so choose. So again, thank you for joining us today. It's been a quick hour, and I hope to see you all at some future event. We have Fall Fest coming up in October, and we host these webinars each year for all different class years. So thanks so much for being invested in your students' career development, and we'll be in touch.